Hey everyone, welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight, where we are always in our flop era. I'm Mark Benani, and today I am thrilled to be presenting another edition in the Broadway Breakdown series. This week we're diving into the delightful mega flop, Drat the Cat. In one of my last videos, which you can check out after this, I took a look at the musical Sweet Charity, and I mentioned that it was originally going to be two one-acts, but one half was dropped for being too similar to an incoming show, that show being Drat the Cat. I asked you all if you wanted me to break it down in the future, and it seems like you did. So, let's do it!
Break it down, mama.
Billed as a musical spoof, this goofy caricature of Victorian melodramas focuses on a cat costume diamond thief terrorizing the pompous upper crust of 1890s New York City and the bumbling amateur detective assigned to catch him. Or her. Drat the Cat began previews on September 30th, 1965 at the Martin Beck Theater, now called the Al Hirschfeld, where the Tony Award-winning Moulin Rouge is currently playing. The show featured several familiar faces in the cast, though at the time they were all mostly relative unknowns. It starred Elliot Gould, most famous then for being Mr. Barbra Streisand, and 19-year-old Leslie Ann Warren, who had just starred in the second television version of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella.
In my own little corner, in my own little chair.
Also among the principal cast was future Agnes Gooch, Jane Connell, Lou Leonard, whom you may remember as Mrs. Pugh in the film version of Annie, and Charles Durning. In the ensemble was Beth Howland, future original Amy and company, and Leo Bloom, who's not really anyone of note, but I like to think that it's Matthew Broderick's character from The Producers. The completely original book, meaning that it wasn't based on a play or film or novel or anything, totally original.
You're saying it's an original.
And the lyrics were by Ira Levin, the acclaimed novelist, playwright, and screenwriter. His works include No Time for Sergeants, Rosemary's Baby, The Stepford Wives, The Boys from Brazil, and Death Trap. Drat sadly would be his only foray into the world of musical theater, though.
Well, that sucks.
The music was by Milton Schafer. Schafer worked as an assistant for Broadway and Hollywood music vet Bob Merrill, and his most well-known song was a children's comedy number performed by Danny Kaye called Mommy, Gimme a Drink of Water.
Mommy, Mommy, give me a drink of water.
I don't know about you, but I think we found the summer anthem for 2022 for sure. Milton Schafer's only Broadway credit before Drat, there would be none after, was for writing the music for the short-lived Bravo Giovanni in 1962. The musical was directed and choreographed by Joe Layton, a man whose Broadway resume feels like a roller coaster of highs with No Strings, George M., and Barnum, and lows with Sherry, Platinum, and Bring Back Birdie. Be sure to check out my breakdown of Bring Back Birdie next if you haven't seen that one. That's a doozy. But Joe Layton's work here for Drat was universally praised, especially two big ballets in the show. Drat the Cat, originally titled Cat and Mouse in pre-production, had a bit of a rough go pre-Broadway. 60s sex symbol Joey Heatherton was originally announced for the leading lady role, but when she objected to the potential casting of her love interest, she was told that casting was none of her concern and she departed.
Good for her.
The show also originally featured legendary stage comic and performer Eddie Foy Jr., playing the dual role of both lead characters' fathers. But when reviews and word of mouth out of town were not great, Foy feared he was in another flop after having starred in the short-lived musicals Rumpel and Donnybrook. Two other shows that I'd love to break down. Let me know if you want Rumpel or Donnybrook broken down.
No, I would like that. I would like that very much.
But Eddie Foy Jr. decided he didn't want to be in another flop, and he departed the cast in Philadelphia. With negative reviews and no big names to draw in crowds, Drat cut its pre-Broadway engagement in Philly short and hobbled into New York. And while several critics, including Walter Kerr of the Herald Tribune, quite enjoyed the show, there were several others, including the all-important New York Times, who did not.
It stinks.
Howard Taubman of the Times wrote, There's not much new, pussycat. Drat the Cat opened on October 10th, 1965 and closed October 16th, 1965 after only 8 performances.
Ouch.
After the short run, an original Broadway cast recording that had been announced by Columbia Records was sadly scrapped. A live cast recording was printed 20 years later in 1984 by Blue Pear Records, but that is a whole nother fascinating story on Blue Pear Records and what they did for a future video. I definitely look forward to bringing that to you guys. And while that live recording is a wonderful portal to the past that would have been lost forever, the sound quality is not great. I'll play a few clips from it during this, but for the purposes of this breakdown, I'll be using the 1997 studio recording version produced by Bruce Kimmel and starring Susan Egan, Jason Graw, Elaine Stritch, Judy Kay, Jonathan Freeman, and a bunch more Broadway favorites. But without much further ado, let's break down the plot of this cartoonish, cat-themed musical comedy caper. Maestro? We're in New York City in the year 1895, the gay 90s.
Get a calendar, honey, it's the 90s.
While the overture continues, a bejeweled Wagnerian soprano stands center stage and starts trilling an aria. As the audience is about to wonder if they are in the right theater, a black-gloved hand appears from behind the opera diva. The gloved hand one by one swipes the Grand Dame's diamonds right off her costume, with the diva unawares. The hand leaves a calling card tucked into the soprano's waistband and vanishes. At the Metropolitan Museum of Art, 2 guards wheel on an iron chest and carefully take a large diamond necklace out of the chest and into a large glass display case on a wooden base. One of the guards leaves with the chest while the other begins guarding. Suddenly, the black-gloved hand appears in the glass case, where it removes the necklace and places their calling card. Then, both gloved hands poke out of the sides of the wooden base, and it wheels itself out the door, leaving the now empty glass case standing on long, thin legs. In a private room at Delmonico's, a real-life former swanky Manhattan club, a large gentleman, who we'll soon learn is the mayor, is on his knees in front of an armchair, where a glamorous showgirl sits with her back to the mayor. He pulls out a diamond ring, but the showgirl won't even look at it. The mayor reaches in through all the ruffles of her big skirt and pulls out her hand, though of course it's not her hand, but the black-gloved hand. The mayor puts the ring on the hand and it disappears. The mayor pulls out a diamond bracelet to entice the starlet. He pulls back out the glove hand and puts the bracelet on. With the showgirl still unwilling to turn around, oblivious to the gifts she's been offered, the mayor pulls out the only thing of value left he can find, a small jewel brooch. The hand dashes out of the skirt and yanks the brooch out of his hand. The mayor gets upset at this apparent greediness and begins scolding the girl as we head to the next vignette. We are now in the showroom of Tiffany's.
Uh-oh.
The black-gloved hand makes quick work of the mannequins, display cases, and shoppers, leaving the calling card behind as they go. As the music builds, everyone is in a panic over their stolen goods, and everyone from the various vignettes discovers the calling cards, comes to the front of the stage, and they all read aloud, "So long, Charlie, the cat strikes again," and they sing the title song.
He's here, the cat, the king of Union Square, and Irving Place and Sutton Place and Lord above knows where. Oh, Drat, the cat, he's pulled another coup, another great big diamond is gone without a clue.
During the song, the mayor speaks with 2 officials named Pincer and Mallet. The mayor demands action from them regarding the thieving cat. Pincer says, "As superintendent of police, I agree 100%. And Mallet says, "As chief of detectives, I would like to resign." But the mayor won't have any of that, especially not with Roger Bulldog Purifoy on his deathbed. The greatest detective of his time, the 3 decide to at least try to see if the old detective can help one last time.
one last time.
The mayor says, "Here, show him this pearl-handled wrench. It was discovered at one of the crime scenes and it's the first clue we've gotten." And after all, Mallet says, Bulldog Purifoy caught the tap-dancing strangler with less. During this exchange, the mayor passes the wrench to Mallet, who hands it to Pincer, who hands it to, you guessed it, the black-gloved hand. The men realize they've been the cat's latest victims, and they all finish the title song. The next scene finds us at the Purifoy apartment where Bulldog lies dying in his bed, attended by his wife Kate and a bearded doctor. According to the script, it's supposed to resemble the old painting The Doctor, or whatever it's called, it says. The doc mentions to Kate that Bulldog has been asking for Bob, his son, who's also a cop. The doctor then readies a syringe, taps it a few times, and then injects himself with it before nodding appreciatively. Pincer and Mallet then enter. Kate leads them to the bed so Bulldog can see them to help lift his spirits, but he reacts a little differently. Pincer asks the doctor if it would be possible to talk to Bulldog about the cat, but the questionable doctor says it's impossible. The infection has already moved into the whatchamacallit, the big thing, next to the round thing.
I don't think that guy's a real doctor.
Well, there's no stopping the cat now, says Pincer. Kate remarks that Bob thinks the cat is someone in high society because they always rob private clubs and fancy hotels and such. Who the heck is Bob, the men ask. Our son, the patrolman, Kate says. She explains that Bulldog never told anyone about his son, so he wouldn't get any special treatment on the police force. Pincer and Mallet look at each other with a glimmer of hope. The son of Bulldog Purifoy. Suddenly off stage, there is a tremendous crash heard. Bob is home. He comes in and immediately goes to his frail father. But Bulldog has more than a few parting words for his son, and he sings "My Son, Uphold the Law."
Incur no mark of black upon your coat of blue. And when you're out in plain clothes, Bob, the same advice holds true. Be unshakable, be unswerving night and day. In short, unshakable. Be a man of whom they say he's so unshakable that he's not shakeable. My only son, uphold the law.
As he sings, Bulldog gets more and more riled, climbing out of his deathbed with fervor. But the last note of the song proves too much for the old detective, and he keels over right then and there. As the onlookers grieve, Bob vows to continue his father's fight against crime and corruption. Pincer tells them that he was born for it and immediately promotes him to acting detective Purifoy assigned to catching the cat. Bob thinks for a moment and makes up his mind. He'll do it. He'll capture the cat in 1 week. Well, maybe 2 weeks, but he'll do it. And he sets out.
I have confidence in sunshine. I have confidence in rain.
We now find ourselves in the study of a stately mansion owned by Lucius Van Gilder and family, which is decorated in money green and features the monetary portraits of the founding fathers. Mrs. Van Gilder is planning a big party and is sorting out the seating arrangements to ensure the most eligible wealthy bachelors are seated besides her daughter Alice, all while Mr. Van Gilder counts large stacks of money, tossing aside the wrinkled ones. Acting detective Bob Purifoy is escorted in to speak with the couple, saying he has read about their upcoming party in the newspaper. Mr. Van Gilder assures Bob it will be a perfectly respectable party. He says there'll be no showgirls, no excessive drinking, no wild dancing, no naughty games in dark corners, no bawdy singing. It's not too late to cancel the whole thing.
That's funny.
But Bob explains that he wishes to attend the party with some patrolmen at the exits, for he believes this party is the likely place for the cat to strike next. At the very mention of the feline thief, Mrs. Van Gilder faints. Her husband explains that This happens several times a day, and the house staff quickly revive her. Mrs. Van Gilder is horrified at policemen being at her swanky party, but Mr. Van Gilder says it's a masquerade ball and no one will even know who they are. Masquerade! Bob is assuring Mrs. Van Gilder that neither he nor his men will speak to any of the guests when their daughter Alice comes in, tripping as she enters. Bob looks at Alice and instantly falls head over heels in love. Mrs. Van Gilder, still very upset, tells Alice about the possible unexpected partygoer and Bob's plan of attending the soiree to catch the thief red-handed. Unlike her mother, Alice is very appreciative of Bob's offer to protect her and tells him that he can bring as many people as he wants to the party and they can talk to everyone and they'll even be the honored guests of the evening. It's all too much for Mrs. Van Gilder, and her husband escorts her upstairs. Alone, Bob tries twirling his nightstick to impress Alice, but ends up almost breaking the chandelier. Alice asks if he thinks he can really catch the cat. He says absolutely. He's figured the cat out, and he'll either strike again at the party as planned, or at Pier 14, where a Japanese idol with 20-carat diamond eyes, a gift to the city of New York from Japan, is being delivered at 1 o'clock today.
That was a freebie.
Bob says he's got a dozen men stationed there waiting for him, but he hopes the cat won't show up, so there's a reason to come to Alice's party. Alice asks Bob if she can be his assistant at the party on Saturday, his personal assistant. Bob says he's not sure detectives have personal assistants, but Alice says of course they do, and the two sing Holmes and Watson.
Sherlock Holmes has Dr. Watson. Watson trots in back of Holmes. All the plots that Holmes finds knots in, Watson jots in tomes. 'Cause it takes one to do the heavy brain work, one to do the more mundane work, one to say it's elementary, one to say amazing.
Bob, of course, agrees to let Alice help him on Saturday. He says, I bet we'll solve this case quickly, but I hope it takes about 5 years. Alice reaches out and touches Bob's hand and asks if a guest list would be helpful. He says, yes, it will, and Alice rushes off to get it. Bob breaks the fourth wall and looks directly at the audience and sings, She Touched Me.
She touched me. I simply have to face the fact she touched me. Control myself and try to act as if I remember my name. But she touched me. She touched me. And suddenly, nothing is the same.
After the song, Alice returns with the guest list. She asks Bob if he'll come early on Saturday to tell her all about what happens at the pier later that day, and Bob agrees to be there at 8 and leaves, though not without first crashing down the marble stairs off stage with more loud crashes. Gleefully, Alice runs upstairs to her room. Once there, she bursts out laughing at the dim-witted Bob and strips off her demure gown to reveal the cat costume.
What?
Yes,
No way.
Alice is the cat burglar.
I can't believe it.
I know.
I'm blown away! You're blown!
Really shocking stuff. M. Night Shyamalan, eat your heart out. Just as Bob did, Alice speaks directly to the audience, asking how many of them guessed that she was actually the cat. She explains that she really wanted to be a veterinarian, but her mother fainted at the thought. All her mother wanted was for her to be married, but the men in her circles are the real thieves, she explains. Not honest, outright thieves like her, but sneaky, corner-cutting thieves. One man her mother wanted to marry, she says, found a way to cheat on his income tax, and we don't even have income tax yet.
Will you shut up? You shut up, man. It's a comedy.
All the pushing by her mother made her all tense and edgy. Then, one night at a mansion-warming party, she stole the lady of the house's giant diamond engagement ring. The next night at the opera, she stole a diamond stick pin. She says somehow seeing all the chaos having a thief in their midst has caused New York's 1%. She doesn't feel so tense and edgy, so thieving has just sort of become a hobby for her. She sings Wild and Reckless.
I don't want their diamonds. I don't need their diamonds. Let them keep their diamonds. I'll get my own. Wild and reckless, free as air, smooth as satin, power to spare. Say I'm evil, I don't care. Watch me smoke my cigarette.
After the song, the lights come up on the Purifoy flat where Bob's mother Kate is making stew. Bob enters high on love and dancing with an invisible partner. Kate tries to ask him about the cat, but Bob can only focus on Alice. He sings She's Roses.
She's roses, she's snowflakes, she's barrels of apples, and ice cream and velvet, and bells when they ring. She's birthdays and New Year's, the night before Christmas, the last day of school, and the first day of spring.
After the song, he realizes it's afternoon and he's going to be late to the pier where the Japanese idol is being delivered, and he dashes off. Over at the pier, the group of patrolmen is meeting with the Japanese attendants who are dressed in kabuki style, cause who doesn't love some classic Broadway racism, right?
Racism, racism.
Anyways, Alice, aka the cat, does indeed show up, and in a big dance sequence called Ignoble Theft of the Idol's Eyes, she manages to outsmart the patrolmen and attendants and make off with the 20-carat diamonds. Here is a bit of that dance from the original live cast recording I talked about earlier, and as you can hear, the audience seems to be absolutely loving it. The end of the comic ballet finds Pincer alone among the Japanese attendants who have all committed hara-kiri. Let me just take this opportunity to reiterate that my goal with these breakdowns is to present the shows as they were first presented. You know, like encores used to do. Moving on, Bob rushes on and realizes he's too late. Pincer is distraught and tells Bob to go back to his regular beat. They'll have a regular patrolman attend the Van Gilder party on Saturday. Bob, of course, desperately tries to change his mind and says that Alice has agreed to help him at the party. So Pincer agrees to let him work the party Saturday, then it's back to his old beat in Far Rockaway on Sunday. Bob agrees and leaves. It's now the night of the big masquerade ball. At the Van Gilder mansion, Mr. Van Gilder, dressed as George Washington, is fanning Mrs. Van Gilder, dressed as Martha, who has clearly just fainted. She comes to, and we see that Alice is there dressed in her cat suit, though without her mask. And her mother couldn't take the scandalous skin-tight cat suit and fainted. Soon, the butler announces Bob has arrived with his men. Mr. Van Gilder escorts his distraught wife upstairs, and Bob enters with his patrolman. Alice informs Bob of the various exits throughout the mansion, including the rooftops, and Bob sends the men out accordingly, leaving the two alone. Alice asks him if he likes her costume, and he gets all tongue-tied and manages to blurt out, "Yes, it's so timely."
Smooth.
Alice somewhat earnestly tells him that she's sorry to hear about what happened at the dock. Bob tells her he was put on his old beat. He says he wasn't there and he should have been. Alice says, "Yes, I noticed you weren't there in any mentions in any of the newspaper accounts."
Nice save.
Bob gazes at her lovingly, so Alice quickly changes the mood by producing a list of likely suspects to be at the party, including her own mother, apparently. Bob says, "Huh, I never imagined the cat could be a woman." And Alice says, "You've got to suspect everyone, even the least likely person." But Bob is just insanely smitten with Alice. For a moment, it seems Alice is feeling something too, be it feelings for Bob, or guilt for her wrongdoing, or a mixture of both, but she snaps out of it and asks Bob to dance. Bob, who says he's only ever practiced dancing with his pillow, is on cloud 9, but Alice, not so much. They sing Dancing with Alice.
No prince in a palace, no sultan or shah has ever commanded such bliss. The pastimes of heaven would seem awfully blah after dancing with Alice like
I'm
this.
dancing with Jerry, no Terry, no Tom. Poor Tom, he's so comically dense. I'm finding it hard to maintain my aplomb. His fingers are freezing, his feet are immense.
During the song, we open up to the garden where various masked partygoers in different costumes join the number, all of them having a miserable time. After the song, Alice and Bob get to work. First, she introduces the minister, and Bob not so subtly interrogates him.
Where were you on the night of last night at midnight?
Next, Alice introduces Bob to Mayor Chicanery and his wife. Alice tries to sort of nudge Bob into suspecting the mayor, but her plan is interrupted by her mother, who introduces Alice to Dowager Underdonk of Boston. These names absolutely kill me. Alice turns to greet her and says, "How do you diamond?" Yes, the Dowager is wearing a massive diamond, which Alice correctly clocks as being 43 carats. Alice pulls Bob aside, though she's still calling him Tom, and asks what he'll do if the cat were to steal that large diamond. He says he's got the place surrounded, so they just search everyone present. She says, what if the cat hides the diamond? Bob says, there aren't many places that you could hide a diamond as big as a chunk of ice. Right on cue, a bartender next to the pair pulls out an ice bucket and tongs to make a drink. Alice gets a bright idea and asks Bob to excuse her. She goes to the butler and asks him to go turn all the lights off for 10 seconds. He says, "But it's not midnight yet, miss." But she says she's tired of the evening and he leaves.
I don't understand.
Apparently, it's traditional at masquerade balls to turn the lights out for a bit, usually at midnight, and everyone unmasks to reveal their true identities. So, there you go.
I see.
Alice returns to her mother and the Dowager and places herself in between the Dowager and the serving wagon with the ice bucket, and announces to the guests that at any moment the lights will all go out and everyone should stay in place and unmask. As she's making this little speech, however, behind her back, the waiter removes a tray from the serving wagon, including the ice bucket, and leaves.
Oh no.
The lights go out and the crowd giggle and murmur in excitement, and Bob tries looking for Alice in the dark. When the lights go back on, he finds Alice doubled over the empty serving tray with her back to the audience. He starts to go to her, but the Dowager lets out a piercing scream. "My diamond, it's gone!" The company all sing a reprise of Drat the cat. Bob tries to stop them singing, but they won't listen until he fires his gun in the air. He tells everyone to calm down, he's got everything under control. One of his men stationed on the rooftop calls down to Bob. "What is it, Jerry? Did you spot him?" "No. You shot me in the arm." "Oh. Sorry. You can come down now." And Bob tells everyone to get inside, and they do, singing Drat the cat as they go. He's here, the cat. Bob is all alone except for Alice, who's still by the empty cart, save for a few empty champagne bottles. He excitedly runs to her, and she very calmly turns around, looking very nonplussed except for the conspicuous large bulge in her downstage cheek. Bob yammers on in excitement about being so close to catching the cat and all the accolades he'll receive and such. Of course, all Alice can do is nod and give the occasional mm-hmm. Bob continues on, now praising Alice and how wonderful she is, all while Alice is trying everything she can think of to get rid of this guy. Finally, Bob asks her to marry him, and Alice gives him a sort of silent mm-hmm. Like, yeah, sure, whatever, just to get him out of there. Bob cannot contain his joy, however, and flings his arm around Alice and passionately kisses her. It's one of those longish kisses where he starts the thing sagging and she starts all stiff, then midway through the kiss, she starts to sag and he straightens up. They part and Alice chokes a bit and spits out the diamond in her hand. Bob is in shock and backs up. He's figured it out, and Alice tries one last-ditch effort. She says, "Look over there!" and grabs one of the empty champagne bottles and smashes Bob over the head, and he collapses. Alice quickly pops the diamond back in her mouth, grabs Bob by the legs, and pulls him down through the outside cellar door. As soon as they've gone, Pincer, Mallet, Van Gilder, and the mayor burst into the garden looking for Bob. After a bit, Alice comes out pretending to have been in hiding. Pincer asks, "Were you hiding from Purifoy?" And Alice says, "Yes, he kissed me and asked me to go away with him to the Riviera." She goes on to say, "And what did he mean by quitting while he was ahead?" "He said what?" the men ask. "Oh yes," Alice goes on. "He said he was taking it on the lam before the coppers wised up. He was drunk, of course, because he kept talking about his briefcase full of diamonds." The plan works perfectly, and Pincer calls for his men named Flanagan, Hannigan, and Brannigan and tells them that Bob is the cat, and they leave to go scour the city for him. In the next scene, we are in the Van Gilder cellar where Bob is bound in chains, handcuffed to a large pipe, and gagged. He looks out at the audience dejectedly, and he lowers his gag and sings Purifoy's Lament.
I'm in love with the cat. Am I me, or have I hatched an outlaw twin? I was so unified, now I'm Jekyll and Hyde. Lord, I hope neither side of me will win.
There's a really fun bit where during the song, Bob continuously is sawing at the pipe using his handcuffs to try to free himself. It works right towards the end of the song, but water comes pouring out of the pipe when he breaks it, drenching Bob as he triumphantly sings the final note and the curtain falls.
The first half is over.
Intermission! And you know what you do at intermission, right? That's right, you like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can do it right there down below. Just do it right now while it's intermission. I've got lots of great videos coming up you're not going to want to miss. Oh, well, I guess Act 2 is about to start. Really short intermissions at this theater. Anyway, let's get on to Act 2.
And now we return to Act 2.
Act 2 opens on the police station, bustling with activity. Men are running in and out of rooms with dispatches, others are polishing their magnifying glasses or pistols, and other men are putting together a giant sign that reads, "Wanted, Bob Purifoy, alias the Cat." Pincer storms on in a rage. He rants and raves about the betrayal of the low-down Bob. He and his men sing "A Pox Upon the Traitor's Brow."
A pox upon the traitor's brow, a pox upon his ear, a cold that knocks on New Year's Day and moves in for the year.
Bunions on his toes and giant blisters on his heels.
May chronic indigestion make a folly of his meals.
Back in the Van Gilder cellar, Bob still sits handcuffed while Alice is aiming Bob's pistol at him, slowly counting down. 2.5? 2 3/4? She warns Bob that she'll pull the trigger if he doesn't promise to never tell anyone of what he knows and leaves her alone. But Bob can't do that. "Pull the trigger," he says. "What, do you want me to shoot you?" asks Alice. And Bob says, "Yes, she's the cat, and he's in love with her, so pull the trigger."
That seems a little extreme.
Alice tries to muster up the courage to shoot, but can't do it and hurls the gun away. While Alice tries to figure out what to do next, she threatens poisoning and starvation. Bob tries to convince her that it's a sign she can't shoot. It proves she's a really good person. Alice is furious and hurls insults at Bob and picks up the gun to try again. While she steels herself to finish the job, Bob sings "Deep in Your Heart."
I'm going to shoot you on the count of 3. 1.
But deep in your heart, down deep in your heart, you're not what you seem to be. so smart, but deep in your heart, a far different girl I see.
3.
During the song, Alice comes up with a plan. Her father always said that every man has his price, so she'll just have to have her father pay Bob off. While Bob keeps singing, we follow Alice out of the cellar and into the house. She drags her parents into her room and tells them the truth about the cat, showing them the suit. Her mother, of course, faints, and they drape her over a chair. Her father continues to listen. She pulls out a case of diamonds, and he faints too. She runs downstairs, telling the servants to revive her parents, and returns to the cellar, uncuffs Bob, and marches him into the study, where her parents, now awake, are waiting, just as Bob finishes the last note of the song. After an initial awkwardness, Mr. Van Gilder begins attempting to buy his daughter out of a sticky situation. Here is a bit of fun dialogue from the original live recording.
Would you like some liquid refreshment?
Oh, I'm on duty, sir.
Oh, yes. Stupid of me. How about a cigar?
No, no, thanks.
You don't smoke, do you?
No, sir.
Of course not. Well, Alice has been outrageously bad, and we are going to punish her most severely. You may rest assured of that. No Europe for you, Miss Jewel.
Oh, no!
Mr. Van Gilder first offers Bob, who says he makes $22 a week, $2,000 to look the other way. When Bob refuses, it's up to $5,000. But Bob explains that he can't possibly look the other way because it's just not what acting detectives do. Exasperated, Van Gilder tells him to name his price, but Bob seemingly doesn't understand. Van Gilder has a great line where he says, "Look, my friend, we're talking about money. Money. G-O-D, money." As they go back and forth some more, it becomes clear to Alice that Bob isn't interested in money. But she does know one thing he's interested in. She asks her parents to leave them alone, and they exit. She lays all her cards out on the table. She says, "Look, you said you loved me before, so I'll run away with you." She adds that she still doesn't like him, and she wouldn't go if she didn't have to. But she really doesn't want to go to prison, so they can run away, just the two of them, and live in the woods somewhere. Bob is torn, which Alice tries to work to her advantage, and she sings "Let's Go."
Let's go. Take just any old train and go. All aboard, you and I. Confusion, goodbye. Contentment, hello. Come rain, come snow. Let's go.
Bob joins her in the last verse as they fantasize about their future fugitive life. Bob agrees not to arrest her, and they'll run away together. Alice calls her parents back into the study and tells them of the arrangement, and Bob announces his intent to marry her. Her parents object, of course, but Alice tells them it's out of their hands. She asks her father if Bob can borrow a suit, though she calls him Tom again. Van Gilder says absolutely not, so Alice takes Bob to go get a suit from one of the servants. Alone, Mr. and Mrs. Van Gilder lament the situation and sing "It's Your Fault."
Yes, it's your fault. It's your fault. You made her what she is today. A thief who has to run away and hide behind locked doors. It's your fault. It's your fault. You struck her with that hairy paw, and there she is outside the law. The fault's entirely yours.
Alice and Bob return and break up the seething parents. They've come to say goodbye before they leave. Bob asks Mr. Van Gilder to deliver a letter to his mother. Alice consoles her sobbing mother, but says she can't tell them where they're going or write to them for some time. Bob and Alice exit, and the Van Gilders run into each other's arms, crying. They sing a reprise of "It's Your Fault," which starts out with each of them taking the blame for the situation, but sure enough evolves back into a shouting match and at each other's throats by the song's end. In the darkness of the scene change, we hear, quote, bird screams, animal cries, and a few blood-curdling wolf howls. The lights come up on a makeshift cabin where a dirty, disheveled, and dour Alice is doing chores. The only thing is the cabin is only about 4 feet tall. So Alice does this all hunched over. It definitely reminds me of the episode of the Goes Wrong show at the courtroom, if you've ever seen that episode. Great show. Totally off topic, but go check out the Goes Wrong show. Anyway, she starts setting up the tree stump for dinner. Big flat rocks as plates, sharpened sticks for forks, and she picks a few leaves off the ceiling and places them by the plates for napkins. An equally exhausted and disheveled Bob enters wearing a large overcoat and carrying a homemade fishing rod. The only thing he caught, however, was a teeny tiny little fish, which he says must have been yesterday's bait. But all is not lost. He's also found 2 whole strawberries. As they sit to eat, Bob asks how Alice's poison ivy is, and Alice asks how Bob's cold is. As they continue to eat what turns out to be woodchuck meat,
That's right, woodchuck chuckers.
Bob talks about how he'll start building a bigger cabin tomorrow now that they've got enough supplies. One where the water drains out instead of in, and maybe have some snake-proof baseboards. But Alice can't take it anymore. She begs Bob to let her return home and grab just a few small diamonds to sell so they can move out west and start a new life where no one has ever heard of the cat. But Bob will not hear of it. She protests, but Bob firmly tells her to go to bed. She begrudgingly does, though she seems to be a little impressed by the now commanding Bob. She curls up on her bed of leaves and Bob watches her for a little bit. When he's sure she's asleep, he sneaks out of the cabin and goes to a nearby hollow tree where he pulls out a bundle containing several glittering diamonds. As the same music plays as when Alice undressed in Act 1, Bob takes off his overcoat to reveal a homemade cat costume. He turns to the audience and asks, "How many of you suspected I didn't really have a cold and was really keeping my overcoat on to hide my cat costume that I made from my old police uniform? Show of hands, please."
Did not see that coming.
He explains that every night he sneaks out and catches a freight train to the city and takes the stolen diamonds from Alice's capers and returns them to their rightful owners. He sings a reprise of Wild and Reckless.
I'm wild and reckless, free as air, smooth as satin, power to spare. Say I'm evil, I don't care. Watch me smoke my cigarette. I don't smoke.
Next, we see Bob the Cat in action, though he hasn't got a fraction of the grace that Alice had. In a ballet billed as The Upside Down Thief, Bob retraces Alice's steps from the opening montage, putting each diamond back Alice stole. But his ungraceful bumbling attracts the attention of Pincer and the whole police force, who quietly tail Bob back to the cabin. As they all hide among the trees, Bob slips into the 4-foot cabin, and right as he settles into the leaf bed, Alice sits up, awake and refreshed. Bob sits up as well, pretending to have just been getting up too. Alice asks if she can go fishing with Bob, seemingly with some genuine warmth. He leans towards her, but they are interrupted when Pincer loudly announces that the cabin's completely surrounded on all sides by men that loathe and despise you. Come out with your hands up, and so on and so forth. Bob springs into action. He tells Alice he's been putting back the diamonds and reveals his cat costume. Pincer begins counting down, and Bob tells Alice to say that he's been holding her prisoner there. Alice is confused, but before she can get any answers, Bob exits the cabin towards the waiting patrolman. Bob confesses to being the cat the whole time.
The whole time you would... The whole time!
And tells them where the rest of the diamonds are in the hollow tree. He goes on to say that he also kidnapped Alice Van Gilder. That's why he's been putting all the diamonds back. He planned to ransom Alice for 500 P's.
What?
500 P's? B's. G's, 500 G's.
It was very convincing.
Alice comes out and, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, goes along with Bob's idea and says she doesn't think she could have lasted one more day and that her father will reward all the men handsomely. A couple of men escort Alice off, while Pincer and the rest of the men lead Bob handcuffed through the town in a song called "Today is a Day for a Band to Play."
Today is a day for a band to play, the greatest day in years. Today is a day for hip hooray and locomotive of cheers. Today is a day when the whole week's pay completely disappears. Today is a day for a band to play, the greatest day in years.
The song evolves into a full-blown ticker tape parade from the grateful mayor and citizens. At the end of the parade, Bob's mother is seen holding a sign that says, "Bob Purifoy is a good boy." Aww. I love that. Bob, however, is thrown in jail. The next scene is back at the Van Gilder mansion 2 weeks after Bob's arrest. Mr. Van Gilder is reading a newspaper and announces that it's the day of Bob's trial. Alice asks if she'll have to testify, but her father makes it clear he spent a large sum of money to make sure her name isn't connected to the story at all. He goes upstairs to check on his wife, and Alice picks up the newspaper. Angry tears start to form, and she flings the paper away. How could he be so stupid? Suddenly, she realizes her true feelings and sings, "I like him."
I like him, up to the ceiling, I like him, he's my he, A to Z. I like him, and I like me.
Now at the courthouse and the big trial, Pincer is on the stand being examined by the prosecution. He lies and says, "I knew he was a thief the minute I laid eyes on him. He has what's called a thief's forehead."
I don't think that's a thing.
Even the judge is dubious and asks Bob if he wants to object, but Bob is resigned and says he doesn't care what is said, he won't object. But from the back of the courthouse, Alice's voice yells her objection to the whole trial. She pushes her way through the patrolmen and spectators and makes her way to the judge's bench. Bob tries to stop her, but Alice won't listen. She hops up on the judge's bench and announces that she is in fact the cat and whips off her gown, revealing her revealing cat costume.
Meow.
And she flings her calling cards in the air. There is total pandemonium in the courthouse. In the craziness, Alice tries to run into Bob's arms, but is restrained by the patrolman. The judge eventually regains order in the court and finds Alice guilty of 44 counts of grand larceny, 39 counts of breaking and entering, 1 count of disturbing a court of law, and 1 count of indecent exposure.
That's a lot.
He sentences her to a prison term of 314 years.
Seems a bit long.
The jury and spectators seem to be really sad about that for some reason. I mean, it was their stuff she stole. But the judge isn't finished. He says, however, since the diamonds were put back in excellent condition, she surrendered of her own volition and she seems to be a good person now. The law allows her to be put into the custody of a responsible party, which of course is Bob.
Aww.
The courtroom erupts in cheers and the two say their vows to the judge and he declares them custodian and custody. More cheers as the pair kiss and the company sings Justice Triumphant.
Justice triumphant, justice triumphant, just as in some fantasy, evil transcended, mercy extended, a perfect degree.
And a reprise of Today is a Day for a Band to Play.
Tomorrow's troubles are still out of sight, and yesterday's have all come right.
So today is a day for the Malay of drums and trumpeteers. Today is a day for the band to play, the greatest day in years.
The end. What did y'all think of Drat the Cat?
I really liked it.
I know it can be hard with these breakdowns to fully convey the humor, though I try my best, but I find this show very, very funny. I love the running gags throughout, like Mrs. Van Gelder fainting, or Alice never remembering Bob's name and calling him Tom, and stuff like that. I mean, I imagine it's gotta be one of the best musicals to only play 8 performances on Broadway.
True, that's true. Very true.
Besides the choreography, in particular the Ignoble Theft Ballet and Leslie Ann Warren's star turn, which many of the older male critics spoke of so misogynistically and downright pervy, some of them. That's a whole nother story. The other most lauded thing in the production was the sets, which almost every critic remarked upon as wild and crazy, with sets popping up and revolving and sinking and skittering around the stage, which all seems pretty par for the course nowadays, but it certainly seems like a major technical innovation for that day and age with Drat the Cat. Set design was in fact Drat's only Tony nomination that year.
That's a damn shame.
Barbra Streisand, whom I mentioned earlier was married at the time to Elliot Gould, who played Bob, did her best to help the production. Besides investing in it herself, she also recorded 2 of the songs from the show, I Like Him,
I like him, I like him,
and a gender-switched He Touched Me.
He touched me. I felt a sudden tingle when he touched me.
Singer Jerry Vale also recorded Deep in Your Heart.
Deep in your heart, down deep in your heart.
But besides those few songs, Drat the Cat hasn't had much of a life at all outside of the Broadway production. Hopefully Encores will present the show in a future season with only minor changes. Thank you all so much for watching. I know this was a long one. You guys that stay to the very end are my absolute favorites. Let me know what you all thought of the show and what other shows you'd like to see me break down in the comments. I always love hearing from you guys. And if you did enjoy this video, a like and especially a share goes a long way to help this channel out. Make sure and subscribe and follow me on Twitter at bwayghostlight. We have a ton of fun over there. But for now, I'm Mark Bonanni. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. I'll see y'all next time.